Good evening. Never before has the campaign for animal rights been so active in our region. From the ports of Humberside to the high streets of North Yorkshire, the last few months have seen demonstrations and arrests, arson attacks and letter bombs. Three issues above all: the transportation of live animals, blood sports and medical research have proved most controversial. But does the response of animal rights groups amount to welfare or warfare? Well, tonight in the studio we have representatives of two groups in the firing line. Stock farmer Bill Crystal, who's lost a third of his business because of the ferry ban, and Mike Rigglesford from the Research for Health Charities group. Also joining us, two activists in the animal rights movement: Pattrick Rattigan, a director of the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection, and Eric Staples of the National Hunt Saboteurs. But first, Peter Lugg charts the development of the welfare lobby's growing militancy.
The police phoned me at about 1:30 this morning. I came down here within about 10-15 minutes, and it was well underway by then. To come and see your main livelihood completely up in flames with firemen inside and just shattering. I was thinking about my family, how we're going to survive, my employees, the people upstairs. It's just a nightmare, really.
No one claimed responsibility for the North Yorkshire firebombs. Police assumed they were the work of a militant animal rights group. As the IRA ceasefire continues to hold, violence perpetrated in the name of animals is regarded as the major terrorist threat in mainland Britain. The animal rights movement has always been radical, with some groups prepared to break the law. But the emergence of individuals willing to endanger human life — this restaurant was serving customers an hour before the bomb — is a phenomenon of the 90s and a development baffling to the public.
I'm a great believer in people being able to express their own views and have their own feelings and to put them across in a logical and sensible fashion. I find this sort of level attack utterly cowardly and potentially lethal to human beings. Anybody who puts a human being after an animal has got a serious problem.
When you get her home, just make sure she's warm and comfortable and just offer her water.
For more than a century and a half, the RSPCA has been the world's leading and best-known animal welfare organisation.
And then from tomorrow morning, just let her have short walks on the lead for about a week. OK?
As here in Leeds, the Society runs homes, clinics and hospitals nationwide.
Certainly, thank you.
We have here the kennels and the cattery. We no longer take stray dogs, but we will take dogs that are unwanted by their owners. We will take welfare animals through social services where people are in hospital and unable to look after them. And then further facilities for boarding, where people, like any private kennels, people go on holiday, they can board their animals here for us.
The RSPCA's guiding principle is to promote kindness and prevent cruelty to animals by all legal means. Last year alone, the RSPCA secured more than 3,000 convictions, without threat, without trespass, and without violence.
Right, here's Benji.
Oh, my little sweetheart.
There you go.
Oh,
Right.
God love you.
You need to come back to clinic on Monday.
But the dilemma for our established welfare organisations is that the slow rate of progress in winning reform, despite vigorous campaigns on issues like hunting and medical research, has led to internal frustrations among members.
The RSPCA has had in the past certain people that may have been considered to be militant, and they have even formed offshoot societies that are militant, but that has never ever been the RSPCA's attitude towards better animal welfare.
We use the same tactics wherever. We imitate the huntsman, as in his voice calls, his horn calls. We use scent dullers to mask the scent of the fox. We use whips to crack in front of the hounds. We'd never hit a hound with a whip. To send the hounds back. That's a recognised tactic of the huntsman. We'd also possibly lay false trails, and also if they put a fox to earth, we'd occupy that earth.
The activities of the Hunt Saboteurs, a splinter group of the League Against Cruel Sports, have been highly provocative and have brought members into direct, often violent conflict with the hunting fraternity.
It was a dead debate in the early 60s. People went out fox hunting and some people disliked it, and that was it. And a group of young men and women decided that it was about time to reawaken the argument.
So the conventional groups, the RSPCAs...
in the League.
...were ineffective?
Well, they weren't ineffective, but they are into a slow campaigning process. They wait for laws to change, they wait for governments to change. These people...
That's democracy, isn't it?
That is democracy, but then again, democracy is a very slow process sometimes, and a democracy occasionally needs a kick up the rear to awaken it to what is going on.
The sight of young people willing to risk arrest and injury has led mainstream groups to sharpen their campaign. In the video age, the propaganda battle has become ever more sophisticated. Material like this arrives on news desks every day of the week. In this case, the British Field Sports Society paints an idyllic traditional picture of fox hunting. While viewed from the perspective of the League Against Cruel Sports, hunting is portrayed as the bloodlust recreation of a rural minority. The same sequence appears in both films. Used in this case by the BFSS to back their claim that the fox is killed cleanly,
it's instantaneous,
and by the League to suggest that it isn't.
This clearly shows the fox wasn't killed cleanly by a single bite to the neck.
Medical research provides the British Union for the Abolition of Vivisection with similarly shocking source material. These sequences, filmed by a supporter working undercover at a reception centre for rhesus monkeys, are being shown to school children in Bradford. The commentary is by a well-known TV personality.
This monkey's teeth were battered during its capture, and its mouth is still bleeding. Remember, this is the south of England, near Brighton.
Okay, as you can see, the primate trade is a brutal business. I do something like 2 or 3 school talks a month, and the rest are universities and colleges. But we believe it's very important work because the whole animal rights issue is, according to opinion polls, is one of the most important issues to students of this age.
Is this just propaganda being fed to young minds?
Well, it's reality. It's called reality. 3 million animals suffer terribly in British laboratories. What do you want me to do? Just play that down? I can't, in all honesty, do that. I mean, we don't go out of our way deliberately to shock. Certainly not the younger school children, because it's counterproductive.
But the BUAV, too, now faces a split in its ranks. While the leadership favours a high-profile crusade fronted by celebrities and MPs, some members are now demanding a campaign aimed directly against research establishments, an area which militant groups have already targeted. In the 70s and 80s, laboratory break-ins and acts of arson by members of the Animal Liberation Front took the animal rights movement well beyond the law. The economic activities of all so-called abusers were now considered legitimate targets. Today, the last public face in the militant animal rights movement is ALF spokesman Robin Webb.
The aims and objectives of the ALF is to have a world without abuse or exploitation of any species whatsoever, either human or non-human. It's always used arson as a tactic, and always had a policy not to endanger life of any kind. Anyone who's compassionate enough, who's climbed over a wall to rescue a rabbit from a hutch where it's been neglected, could claim it as the ALF. It's the general public who are the ALF. They are the compassionate commandos, the ones who care enough to do something on behalf of animals.
But arsonists who claim their devices threaten property alone draw only contempt from police officers in North Yorkshire called in to investigate their crimes.
Whoever placed this device showed a total disregard for human life, and it was a grave risk, not only to the emergency services, but also to members of the public. When you look at Lindsley's shop on Cheltenham Parade, I mean, the shop itself contained live ammunition that was going off while our services were trying to put the fire out. Above the premises, there are residential premises where people were actually asleep.
I've seen literature like the magazine that's by you with ALF on the cover, which actually includes bomb-making instructions.
Well, this isn't produced by the Animal Liberation Front press office or the supporters group or any bona fide organisation of that nature.
But it's titled ALF Newsletter.
Yes, no, bomb-making instructions, instructions on how to do it, if you like, are not produced by the supporters group or the press office. These are produced by individual activists anonymously, showing people how to make not bombs but incendiary devices. These aren't things that actually explode, go bang to harm people.
Beyond the ALF, animal militancy disintegrates into a secret network of small factions and private individuals. A Home Office unit based at New Scotland Yard holds the names of 800 groups on an animal rights national index. 2 of those, the Animal Rights Militia and the Justice Department, are suspected of being involved in the current bombing campaign.
Live transport. Live
Throughout this winter and even this week, the transportation of live animals issue has attracted the full force of animal rights indignation. High-profile campaigning by moderate groups has been backed up by the direct action of young people, now ready to brave the bows of cargo boats in flimsy inflatable dinghies. Behind them, the covert threats of extremists, the arson attacks on hauliers, the letter bombs to ferry companies. Today, the transportation of calves and sheep to the continent from the north of England has effectively been stopped. The final route, an air bridge from Humberside Airport, abandoned last November.
We don't live in a vacuum. We are part of a community, and we have to take recognition of what the community says. It's not been a nice time, to be honest. It's been quite hard to get through. It's had an effect on my family, obviously. But whilst it is sensitive and emotive, I don't think anybody could condone threats to my staff, to myself, bomb threats that we've received, threats of razor blades in letters for people opening the mail in the morning, things like that.
So how has it come to this? Have we capitulated to terrorism? And if so, who is to blame? Many point the finger at politicians and the failure of Parliament to deliver legislation in tune with public opinion. The Lincolnshire MP, Sir Richard Boddy, is the most successful animal welfare campaigner inside the House of Commons.
What would you say to young activists who say, this process is just too slow? I've got to get out there. I've got to stand in front of the hounds. I've even got to firebomb shops.
Well, up to a point I'd agree with them. I think they're mistaken over hunting. But over vivisection, I can understand their frustration. I share it entirely. But after all, when you are introducing a law, you are introducing a crime. And you're saying to people, what you've been doing up to now has been lawful, but from now on you're going to be a criminal if you continue to do it. Now, I think if you're going to say that to any group of your fellow citizens, you've got to prove your case and show that it is indeed a criminal and immoral act that has been done legitimately up to now.
For Barry Davis, firebombed out of business and branded an abuser, the struggle to re-establish himself has already begun. Finding new premises is proving difficult. Suddenly, fishing tackle and gun dealers are considered undesirable tenants.
I feel as I've been judged, tried and sentenced without any form of recourse to argument or sensibility, and I find it most difficult to accept. But I don't find that what they've done is any form of expression at all. It's a pure act of revenge and terrorism. I regard these people as being cowards. They've carried out an illegal act without any reference to myself or my customers or my staff at all. What they have done is illegal. What I am doing and what I intend to continue doing is legal.
OK, well, if I can turn first of all to Pattrick Rattigan. I know your organisation, your particular organisation, doesn't believe in violent means of protesting and campaigning, but do you sense a tangible shift in general towards direct action and more violent means?
In general, I think the frustration has built up to a point whereby some people who wouldn't have taken direct action before are doing now. The BUAV, of course, has no part in any sort of ALF activity whatsoever, so I have to make that clear to start with. But there is a frustration that's built up because of the message is not getting across. It's not getting across with the mass communications media, it's not getting through to the politicians, and there is a consciousness level rising all the time in the animal rights movement, which is becoming more and more angry.
Do you feel threatened yourself, Bill Crystal? Because I know you've lost a lot of your business because of the ferry ban.
It is a threat when people will not allow a legitimate trade. It's not as if the animals were being subject to pressure or terrorised or ill-treated. They aren't.
OK, now, terrorism, Eric Staples, I know you're not involved in that, but I think you would agree that on occasion you go to the borderline when you put yourself between the fox and the hounds, you provoke incidents. How far are you prepared to go on behalf of animals?
Hunt Saboteurs Association is a non-violent direct action movement. It has been its 30 years. We have never gone out there with the intention of attacking or injuring or fighting with anybody.
I realise that, but there have been incidents.
The violence has always come from their side.
Well, there's a dispute about that.
Right, whatever. I can give you statistics
both sides blame each
about
other.
that.
What I'm trying to say to you is, how far down the line would you go to protect your fox?
Myself, personally, I will continue to do what I've done for the last 8 years. I will lawfully and peacefully protest against blood sports. And, you know, if a government brings in a draconian law to make my lawful, peaceful protest illegal, then I will continue.
But we've seen on the film people prepared to put animal lives before human lives. People at home may say, that's balmy, I can't even understand it, begin to understand it. Can you give us some insight into the way people who do that might feel?
I don't necessarily think that is true. I think people who are driven to what is deemed acts of terrorism come from a very long journey before they could ever think about that sort of action. The frustration, the day-to-day abuse of animals, the genocidal destruction of animals. No human person has ever been killed or injured by an act claimed by a legitimate animal rights organisation or even some of the fringe groups.
Michael Rugglesford, you wanted to come in there?
Well, in Bristol a few years back, we saw part of the hand blown off a child in a pushchair as the terrorists attempted to blow up a medical researcher. We've seen these firebomb attacks, and we've seen intimidation, break-ins in hospitals. We have charity shops where people are coming in and spitting at the volunteer ladies who work in them. We've seen all sorts of problems like that. If you're going to put a firebomb somewhere, even if you've made sure that the building's empty, you're putting the firemen's lives at risk. Also, we saw the RSPCA there running an animal hospital using drugs and other treatments to treat those animals that have been developed through work on live animals. Now, one of the people that got a bomb last Christmas was the Veterinary Diagnostic Centre in Brighton. That's where your vet or my vet would send a blood sample from your cat or dog if they didn't know what was wrong with it. They'd send it to Brighton to get the vets there to try and figure it out. Now that place got a bomb from the activists. At that point, we're dealing with lunatics. And the trouble is that they're stifling debate. We would like to discuss in public, but every time anybody stands up and talks about it, they get threats, they get the intimidation, and they get the violence.
Although you're not violent as an organisation, do you think it might be
violent
possible...
as an individual, thank you very much.
Do you not think that you might attract those sort of individuals to you because every weekend and during the week sometimes you go out and it's reported in the papers that you've had violent clashes, and sometimes people are saying, people like neo-Nazis or anarchists or whatever, are just joining up, even if you don't want them, it's attracting them. The wrong sort of people.
If people come to us with that sort of attitude, after a fortnight they have gone because we do not provide them with a battleground for their political beliefs. That is not what we're about. We're a single-issue organisation that is only concerned with saving the hunted quarry on that day.
What do you think about this, Bill Crystal?
Well, I believe that everyone should do what they want to do. I enjoy, or used to enjoy, an odd day's hunting. It's a means to an end. There isn't no longer within the UK a natural quarry. There isn't a natural enemy to a fox.
So what
do we do with it? Do we shoot them and perhaps not shoot them cleanly because they'll go to ground and probably die a worse death there? Or do we use the hounds to split the foxes up and then probably shoot them? There's nothing wrong in people enjoying a day in the countryside. What I object to is the people who come into my land telling me what I can or can't do in my own farmyard and on my own land.
Isn't that a fair point?
Not at all. This man is talking rubbish again. Well, for starters, foxes are self-regulating. Have you a problem with foxes on your land?
I do.
That wasn't what you said earlier.
I do have a problem. Have you seen the damage a fox will do to young lambs if the lamb doesn't get up straight away? Of course, you would know, because you've been there when it's blowing a howling gale, and the bloody fox is hungry as well as everything else, and it comes out and will take a lamb.
I have been there, Bill. I've seen foxes go through a whole flock of sheep and lambs.
That's right, and you've seen the mess they make.
They don't make
Right. If I can move on to another area, Mr. Rattigan, we saw the debate coming into schools. We saw a man using shock tactics with very young children in a classroom. Do you really think that's the right forum for this sort of propaganda?
Up to a point, we wouldn't deliberately really shock a young child. There is a limit. But you have to realise these children are subject to a barrage of misinformation and disinformation constantly through the television.
You're saying young children are influenced by what and how exactly?
Everything from children's ward on television to all the medical research breakthroughs which are coming to us every second day, which have nothing at all behind them.
And are you denying those breakthroughs?
Of course. Of course, we have got an out-of-control, medically induced plague of ill health in this country. Cancers, heart disease, diabetes, epilepsy, arthritis. We've got 20,000 diseases and rising. Where are they coming from? Where are all the wrecked kidneys coming from? Where are all the wrecked livers coming from? They're coming from the deluge of petrochemicals. Pesticides, herbicides, solvents, prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, which are coming from the Vivisection laboratories.
Mike Wrigglesworth,
That's where they're
just a
coming
moment,
from.
Mr. Crystal. Mike Wrigglesworth, you've got to answer that.
The medical research charities are nothing whatsoever to do with the pharmaceutical industry. The medical research charities are
Totally
given money donated by the public, people like us, who desperately want to see treatments, prevention or possibly cures for the diseases that we can't treat at the moment. Now, to view all of that as some sort of grand conspiracy theory is really a little ill. Unfortunately, at present, some small use of research has to make use of animals. 97% of what we do, however, doesn't use any animals at all.
So what do you feel about these school debates on this subject?
Well, we have an extremely well-organised animal rights movement in this country. The three biggest animal rights groups, of which we have a representative one here, and you saw another representative from the same group in the school, spend £3 million a year in the UK on putting out propaganda into schools. Now, if that money was actually put into charities like, for instance, the Fund for the Replacement of Animals in Medical Experiments, which is attempting to find replacement for some uses of animals, so if that money was channeled into positive uses of ways of trying to prevent animals being used, then we could actually probably see something going forward. But just to put propaganda into schools confuses school children and stops the very children who might be our scientists tomorrow, who wouldn't want to use animals, coming in to medical science and helping us with our work.
Could I move on to a related subject, the effectiveness of this whole campaign? We've established that, in fact, it is becoming more violent. Eric Staples, do you think that people are giving up on Parliament, on police, on the establishment doing anything about it, and that's why they're going to these more violent means?
No, I mean, 7 days a week, every month of the year, throughout the year, there are animal welfare organisations, animal rights organisations campaigning on your high streets, writing letters, taking part in demonstrations, pickets. The unfortunate thing is, the only time we get to go on telly is when something gets burnt down, when a bomb goes off.
So you think violence damages your cause?
I can't condone it.
Well, do you think Bill Crystal stopped your ferry trade? Was it the violent action?
Yes, it was. It had to have been a commercial decision by the ferry companies. If a ship leaves Humberside with stock on board, they get a bomb scare, they have to stop and search the ship. That then delays the time that the animals are in transit, which is already a fairly lengthy crossing, not the best one of our choice, I might add, but it's still a lengthy crossing. And the ship is then anchored at sea for several hours while a full search of the ship is made, and it has to be made if a threat, and then again at the other end. Now, these animals, the day that this happened, did have hair, they had food, they had water, they had everything. They took nothing. And it all had to be dumped at sea. And the harvest we've had this year, that was a terrible shame. But we do that. We produce the best animals. There is a market for those animals because it is wanted on the other side. I agree that we have to transport animals properly, that they have to be looked after properly, but you're the wrong side of the channel, guys.
They're not being transported properly at the moment, and that's
They are.
the problem.
They are, to the best of our ability. We cannot be held responsible for the other side. The problem is that the people in Italy want the little lambs, the little 11-kilo lambs, because they're nice and succulent. So do they want them in southern Spain. They're the people who won't reduce the transport time.
Well, let's see. We're all looking after animals in our own ways, or we profess to be here. So,
My livelihood depends on that.
If there was a Bill of Rights for animals, I'm sure we'd have different things in it. What about you, Mr. Rattigan?
Yeah.
If we were to come to a Bill of Rights, what would you actually put in it?
My own personal Bill of Rights? Oh, well, there wouldn't be any animal abuse at all.
What would be the animals' rights as far as you are concerned?
Same as humans.
Eric Staples.
It'd be exactly the same. There'd be no animal abuse at all. Animals will be able to regulate themselves, breed at their own stages. Nobody would need to eat them, wear them, hunt them, exploit them.
You don't have
in
to
the natural state, in the wild, it's red in tooth and claw. Everybody's killing everybody else.
Who interfered with the natural state of things? Man.
Mr. Wrigglesford.
We need to live with animals in a natural way. So, for instance, I would not put a cockroach above the life of a rat. I would not put a rat above the life of a dog. And I would not put a dog above the life of a primate.
But they would say that cutting animals up for experiment wasn't a natural way.
I would not put a primate above the life of a human. So long as it's done with a proper welfare and humanitarian ways, and you minimise all the distress, then some limited controlled use of animals while we are investigating terrible diseases is going to have to go on. I am against all animal abuse for the sake of animal abuse.
Bill Crystal, what rights would you give animals in your ideal world?
You have respect for those creatures because they are living the life that they are used to.
Well, that's some sort of an excuse
Not in
for
the
their
Garden of
life.
Eden, it wasn't, was it?
Eric Staples, good.
That's not an excuse. I mean, but before factory farming came along, before man took in herds of animals to keep for food and milk, their life was somewhat different.
If man hadn't brought animals in for food and milk, you wouldn't wear the clothes you have now. If there was no animals, what would you wear if there wasn't nylon from the petrochemical industry? What would you use for clothes? What would you use to keep warm? How would you generate heat?
Cotton.
Well, that's exactly what I'm
How
doing
would you
now.
grow cotton? You can't grow cotton in the UK.
You get it from abroad. We have.
But you get your cotton from South America. In South America, they don't have, not only do they not have animal rights, they don't have human rights either.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. We have to stop it there. That's all for this edition of Close Up North, but we'll be back again next week. From all of us here, a very good night to you.